Okay, so we've talked a lot about this touchy-feely, squishy mindset. We'll put that behind us now. So the second part is a strict methodology. So the methodology that we have is of 4 steps: learn, ideate, visualize, and evaluate. To help you remember this, it spells the acronym LIVE, L-I-V-E. So we'll take I don't want to do that just yet. We have 4 steps in the process, and it's perfectly fine. How do I get this to work? That's not it. There we go. There we go. I've done this before. Don't worry. I'm a professional. It's perfectly fine to go steps 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my goodness, maybe I'm not a professional. And it's also perfectly fine to go back in the process. That's part of the experimentation. So the first step of learn. This is where we plan our research methods, we build our research guides, we perform our research, and then we document what we've learned. And one key differentiator here is that we are not learning what the system should do. We're not learning about system requirements, we're not learning about use cases, or system documentation, or system functionality. We're learning about the people. What do the people want? What do the people need? How do they feel about the current system? What are their needs? We're really getting in touch with the people. And during the second phase, we ideate. That's a fancy word for it means coming up with a lot of ideas. So we brainstorm, we synthesize, we put ideas together, and we come up with new ideas. We capture what we've learned, and we begin to ask ourselves, how might we? With this idea, how might we implement this idea? How might we make this idea better? And then the third phase, this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. In the third phase, we pick the best ideas out of our 5 ideas or 20 ideas or 100 ideas. We pick the best ones, and we start to develop prototypes. And we share our prototypes with end users, end people, and we get their feedback. So this slide is the what we do. These are the steps of what we do during human-centered design. And for the next slide, it's going to be how we do it. So an NFL football coach, and I know this is true, I'm not a sports person, but I read it online, so it has to be true, is that NFL coaches have between 300 and 400 plays in their playbook. And then depending upon the defensive formation, the score, the time left in the game, and many other factors, they'll pull the appropriate play at any given time. We have a similar approach in citizen-centered design. We have a couple of dozen or more different plays for each phase. And we'll pull the appropriate play or the best technique based upon the people and the environment. I really am a professional, don't worry. There's so many buttons on here. Here we go. So for the learn phase, some of our plays may include doing interviews, 5 whys, journey mapping. Journey mapping is fun. When you look at one, it looks a little bit like a Visio process flow chart, but instead of mapping out a system interaction or system functionality, it actually maps out the experience of a person, how a person feels and what their personal journey is. It can be real fascinating. During the ideate phase, we have a lot of different plays as well. I think my favorite is brainstorming. An analogy I use a lot whenever I talk about brainstorming is my grandson. He's 4 years old. 4 years old. And he plays t-ball. If any of you have ever watched little 3 and 4-year-olds play t-ball, it's a hoot. Half the time, 3/4 of the time, those little guys, they can't even hit the ball on the tee. They swing, they miss, they hit themselves with the bat. But what do the parents do? Every single swing, what do they do? Good swing, good job, keep your eye on the ball. Every swing is a good swing. There's no such thing as a bad swing at T-ball. That's what brainstorming is. Anytime someone has an idea, you say, good idea, keep it going, good job. Every idea is a good idea. And this provides an environment of safety where people can continually come up with ideas. Maybe some are good, some are bad, it doesn't matter, they're all good. And you can get so many ideas, and the confidence people have can result in, what am I doing over here? Oh my goodness, I'm embarrassing myself. Comes up with so many great ideas that you otherwise never would come up with. The third is visualize. There's a lot of different techniques we can do here for creating prototypes. Like storyboards, for example, can look a little bit like a cartoon. You could use Post-it notes on a wall. You can use your fancy storyboarding software if you want to get all fancy. But you can create some type of a cartoon or tell a story that talks about what people can do during a process. And then evaluation. A lot of different things we can do here. We can do usability testing where we recruit people off the street, appropriate people that meet the demographics of your target user base. Have them do testing. You can do A/B testing. This is similar where you have two options, maybe one web design and another web design. Or maybe you have one way of wording something and then a second way of wording something, and you show both to people and you say, well, which one do you like more and why? So lots of different techniques and different plays that we can use during each of our 4 phases. Citizen-centered design can be used in both waterfall and agile. Okay, everyone, I worked hard on this, so let's see if this works. Pretty fancy, huh? I'm proud of myself. So if we consider the whole citizen-centered design as one thing or one component, it fits in both waterfall and agile. If you don't know these terms, it's not a problem. Waterfall is just a term for the traditional way that we build software solutions. And agile is a term for a newer way to develop software that's starting to become more popular in the last 3 or 4 years. So if you're looking at a waterfall methodology, citizen-centered design fits very well within the design phase of your waterfall. You know, for example, I work at Cover California. I'm working with the Cal Here's project. Perhaps you've heard of one of those. And we're actually doing this right now, where we're using citizen-centered design techniques, and we're using prototypes, the usability testing, the A/B testing, and we're doing all of that during the design phase of an overall waterfall methodology. Additionally, citizen-centered design also plays very, very nicely in an agile iterative process, whether it's Scrum or extreme programming or any of the other methodologies as well. You could either do citizen-centered design within the agile team. Alternatively, you could also have a separate design team that runs parallel sprints focused just on design that feed into your normal design sprint, your normal non-design sprints. So plays well with both. So now let's come back to our case study. Everyone remembers this? Everyone's nodding their head. Yes, yes. So a case study here. So the hospital had a need for a medical device for nurses to take notes to use during their medical procedures. So the design team began the first step, which begins with an L, learn. So they observed nurses, real nurses, who are the real users during the medical procedures. And this is what they saw. Okay, do you see a problem? Okay, something is wrong with this picture. Okay, I'll help you out. If I can find the right button. Okay, does this help? They said they needed an iPad for the nurses to use, but they noticed the entire time the nurse had one hand to hold the hand of the patient. And one thing they quickly learned is if they delivered iPads, the nurses wouldn't be able to use them because comforting the patient during this procedure was the most important thing. So what did they actually deliver? This. It's not an iPad. It's not cool. It's not hip. It doesn't have a color screen. It's not fancy. But it can be used with one hand. And they realized that, and the hospital agreed afterwards, that if they had provided iPads, it would have been a complete failure. The nurses wouldn't have used it because they can't use an iPad with one hand. So because they use citizen-centered design techniques, they were able to identify this issue early in the process as opposed to later in the process. And so, as I mentioned before, citizen-centered design has been around for quite some time, but why now? Why is now a time for us to begin discussing it within the government sector? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one is citizen awareness. As people shared during the lunch session, if you happen to attend some of those, everyone uses Google. Everyone uses Google Maps and iPhones. And people are accustomed in their own private lives for having products and services that are built from a human-centered design perspective. And so people are beginning to demand this from government as well. And some governments are already taking the lead in this. I know Federal 18F is doing this, the Mississippi Department of Health Services. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I read an article where in Great Britain, they took every government agency, every website for every government agency, and they combined them into one portal for the citizens of the UK to use using human-centered design techniques and methodologies. They combined 374 different websites into one, and is exponentially easier to use. So citizens are becoming more aware of this. The second one is budget constraints. What happens many times whenever we deliver systems is that after the system is delivered, we find, oh, there's a problem. For example, in the session this morning with electronic health records, they delivered the solution, and after it was in production, they realized, oh, the pharmacy module doesn't work. It doesn't meet the needs. And so the reason this can help with budget constraints is using a human-centered design approach. It's a prime way to identify the problems up front, so you can fail often, fail fast, fail early up front, identify those problems, create more prototypes, and so that whenever you do deliver the system, you don't have to spend more money after the fact to fix it. Increased self-service. A quote I heard from this morning's session is, people are more technology savvy now than ever before. And so by creating human-centered design websites, human-centered designed, what am I trying to say? Websites built with human-centered design principles. Thank you. We were able to provide greater self-service for people to use, which reduces calls to our service center. It reduces appeals. It makes things more efficient. And finally, changing demographics. Old guys like me with grandchildren, we're one generation, but there's another generation of people entering the workforce today. They've used Facebook as long as they can remember. They were practically born with an iPhone in their hands. And so because of our changing demographics, these are the people who will demand these types of changes that human-centered design can provide. So as we wrap up, whenever you leave this conference, you'll have many different options available to you on how you can improve your digital services that you provide to your constituents. And we hope you find that citizen-centered design stands apart from the rest. And so that is the end of our presentation, and now I'll hand it over to Lauren and a couple of other folks who are smarter than me who can help answer questions for us.
All right, so I think we have about 10 minutes. And we're going to pass the microphone around. So we have Anand here, who's the president of Cambria Solutions, who's active in a few of our projects that we leverage citizen-centered design. Then also Jeff, who is a UX expert in the field, and again, has been a part of our project. So they'll help answer our questions, and Steve and I can chime in as well, based on your other questions. So don't be shy. Who wants to be first? I have a list of questions I'll pepper them with if you guys don't ask them. So.
Where would we start?
So
if I have a problem and I want to collect my interested parties in my department, what do I need to do to at least get this ball rolling?
I think good question. And your name, please?
Art.
Art. So the first thing, right, that you heard in the presentation today was around the mindset of people that you need when you go about your human-centered design, right? So identifying people who fall into that mindset, right? Because that's extremely important. So you innovate and you come up with ideas. So that's one piece. So finding people with who can empathize, finding people who can have fun. And if you don't have that culture among the people who have the subject matter, then how do you get them to change so they at least adapt some of these things? That's one. The second piece that you would have to think about is the methodology, right? And for the methodology and the tools, there are several ways that you can go about learning some of that, right? There is a website called usability.gov, which is that the federal government has put out there with tons of techniques that are there. You can apply some of the methods that are there or techniques that are there. The key is to figure out which techniques make sense for what environment. So depending upon the problem that you have, you may have to use a different set of techniques. And there are obviously firms like ours and some others who provide services in this space, right? Coaching or training, or who have the expertise in house. And so those are two things that you can do. The third thing I would say that's important in this is set small goals for yourself, right? When you talk about a problem, see if you can break it down into a smaller problem and see that, and try to address that. If you have success in addressing that, then try to expand that into something bigger, right? So that would be anything that you would like to add?
That was well said. That was well said.
Thank you.
So start with the people.
Start with the people.
I think one of the things that we brainstorm as a team also is even, because it can be overwhelming when you see this new thing. Thank you. When you see this new thing and this methodology and this mindset, but even starting with everyone has a weekly or a monthly meeting, right, for your staff. Start with that, right? Ask if you're leading the meeting, go after and say, hey, is this effective? What would you like to see? I mean, small things like that, that's still kind of user-centered design. You're not creating a product, right, or a big system, but you're at least starting to develop that mindset of how can I improve, and then iterate on that and add it into the agenda, et cetera. So, I mean, that's at the smallest level. You can do that tomorrow. So those are kind of things that even within our company, Cambria, we're not every day creating a new product, right, but just our daily kind of interactions, you can start implementing this stuff.
Yeah.
Other questions? I know there's more. That's a good one to start with. You guys all know how to do this now? Yeah.
Mike Valley, California Health and Human Services Agency. From an organizational perspective, how do you see this being implemented in the ideal state in our government agency? Does this practice reside in a functional area? Does it reside in the IT shop? Is it project-based? Is there a special SWAT team that comes down that owns the knowledge of this practice? What's kind of the best way to do it? Is there anyone who has a mature human-centered design practice in government?
Okay, so good question. I will give you our own example of Cambria Solutions, right? When we saw this change happening in the industry, largely in the commercial sector, and we are a consulting firm, so we have been serving government for the last 13 years, and we said, so what does that mean? The skills and the services that we provided were based on what government was seeking, which means we did not have these skills in-house. So, but when we recognized what we had to do, the first thing that we had to figure out is what kind of people do we have in the firm, and do they fit that? Do they have the attributes that we talked about? And we recognized, no, we don't have some of that. Fun, empathizing, right? They had some of that, but we didn't have all of that. So we made the first step that we took as a leadership organization. We said, let's define where we want to go, which is we want to build these capabilities within our organization. What values do we need to have as people in the firm? And we defined the values as innovation. And when you want to innovate in an environment, you have to have the mindset of being able to have fun, not saying that's a bad idea. Any ideas are welcome, encouraging people to open up. So we identified those attributes and values that we wanted to have. What is the next thing that we did? The next thing that we did, we said, we got to prioritize this and encourage those behaviors that get people to adapt, get these values, right? And this becomes, so you can walk, you can talk, but being able to live those values every single day. So we created those behaviors. We had awards. We had, and our team can tell you, right? And every one of our employees today can talk about the values of our firm. The reason I say that is, in any organization, you should be able to do that, right? So that's the second step. The third step is, even with all that, just like people say, even Tiger Woods had a coach even when he was the best golfer in the world. So what it means is, even if you have all the expertise in-house, there are people who have been doing this for a long time, and to give you an outsider's perspective, right? Because sometimes we're all mired in what we do. So engage some other firms or other departments who might be a step ahead, right? Part of your agency, Michael, that's Office of Systems Integration, that is the Child Welfare Digital Services. We are fortunate, we are building the licensing module for Child Welfare Digital Services. Companies like us, there are some other companies who have some of these skills, engage one or more of those firms, right? So these are some of the ways you can do it. We have done it, and we have done it in less than a year, and I think our employees can attest to what we went through and how we did it. We'll be happy to share what we did.
I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up. I guess I have one maybe for Jeff in on it. Is how does kind of UX, maybe describe how UX and this methodology kind of play together, right? Where do they fit in? Or maybe just talk a little bit about kind of the UX experience, because it does model off a lot of this in terms of interaction and such.
I'll field that one. So I'm Jeff Heath. I'm part of the Human-Centered Design Management team at Cambria Solutions. So human-centered design, citizen-centered design, and user experience, they're all kind of the same vernacular, the same types of things, the buzzwords you'll hear in the industries today. And they're really about the core concepts of finding out what the user's goals, tasks, and needs are. And those things are what's really vital and important to creating a successful product or successful service, be it in the digital services realm or even physical, tangible, other types of realms itself. By focusing on the users themselves and understanding what they need and how they need to accomplish their goals, you can create your own sort of workflow and process around the stuff that they need to do, and it helps you understand the problems that they go through. So I would say, honestly, one of the biggest parts of my job is helping companies or helping services or government entities to understand what the problems they're trying to solve actually are. So, as Steve essentially said earlier in one of his case studies, you know, somebody said, hey, I want an iPad. Give me some app, right? How many times does a government service say, hey, I need this? Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's see, what problem are you trying to solve? You know, that's where our expertise in coming in with user experience, human-centered and citizen-centered design really comes and helps understand, identify real problems to be solved with solutions that users can actually use. So it's very vital for modern day technology and digital services.
One thing I would just add to that, right? So think about, we believe, right, as a firm, that any government organization, right, as it relates to any service that you provide to your citizens, the first step that you would do is research, user research, to determine what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what do your citizens need. That would be the first step, right? Today, in most organizations, we look at, in government organizations, look at the system, what capabilities that the system need to have, right? And how much will that system cost? What are the alternatives, right? And we are saying, we are fundamentally changing or asking government to see things from a different way. What are the services that you're trying to provide? What do your people that you're trying to serve actually need? And once you understand that, then look at what might be the solutions that might be out there that might fit that need.
Thank you guys. So I think our buzzer went off. So if you guys have more questions, we'll be out by the booth. Sometimes that's easier to ask individual questions and brainstorm with us on some of the stuff we're doing already. So thank you again for your interest in